Westeros is filled with some of the most mother-f***ing sons of you will ever meet. Welcome back to Gaming Backlog. I'm Beena, and I'm very late to Metaphor ReFantazio. Yes, go ahead, throw the tomatoes at me. But better late than never, right? So again, Metaphor ReFantazio. Everyone's raving about it. The newest IP from Atlas is brimming with an innovative art style, badass characters, and good old-fashioned trauma. Sinking my teeth into the first few hours of the game, I tried not to expect too much. Going in blind, the game's gotten me to think about something not many want to delve into when immersing in a fantasy game: the real world. Ah yes! Taxes, crippling anxiety, the constant back pains and identity crisis, it burns!
Who am I?
Fantasy should be the escape that takes you away from it all, shouldn't it? I'm no expert, but if you look at the most popular fantasy series out there, those stories accentuate and reveal a lot more about ourselves and the world, more than what we might care to admit. So what is it about Metaphor ReFantazio that has me overthinking? By the first few hours, the game doesn't hold your hand, throwing you quite literally into Ukrainia, a world cut headless by the death of its king. Already you see what the main character will have to face for what I feel is the rest of the game, especially discrimination as an Elda, a nearly extinct tribe many others look down upon.
Filthy gremlin like you. What you got in the capital?
Humans are definitely not in anyone's good graces either, because they look like this. We really let ourselves go, huh? The protagonist has a keepsake that he keeps close to his heart, a book that tells the tale of a world without race, united as one people, a utopia unmarred by the many issues that make a sordid cocktail out of racial and societal injustice. The painterly illustrations are something out of a children's bedtime storybook, where the usual fantasies of stone-walled castles and pastoral fields are replaced by watercolors of a sliver of a city that very much resembles a bustling modern Shibuya. I really like how Metaphor subverts the perception of what defines fantasy in the game. To them, their idea of fantasy is our everyday modern world. It is pretty interesting to have that looking glass flipped and turned upside down, trading something we know so well as the ideal world in a fairy tale. In Ukrainia, certain tribes are seen as inferior to the rest. People in power never always have the best intentions in mind, and people struggle day in and day out as powerful figures use them as pawns for their own master plans. Despite cute fairy companions, magic powers, and different types of living beings and creatures, Metaphor, like any good classic high fantasy, balances out the boons with the banes, making a far-off world seem a lot more familiar and grounded. If I had to think about it, fantasy is like a mirror. It informs you of what you want to see and also what you do see. Some of the most popular fantasy titles, like Game of Thrones, The Lord of the Rings, build lands down to the most minute detail, making their worlds feel as lived in as possible. But as beautiful as these places are filled with magic, mystique, and dragons, for one, Westeros is filled with some of the most mother-f***ing sons of you will ever meet. I'm glad they went down to It's politics inspired by England's historical Wars of the Roses, which was, as wars go, a very messy war between House York and House Lancaster. On the other hand, Tolkien's work, a lot of scholars would say, reflects a lot of things he's seen serving in World War I, from the exacerbation of natural resources to the war effort and the inevitability of death. Atlas's games are pretty well known for highlighting social commentary and issues, from disparities between different groups of people to the power an institution could hold over a nation. When it comes to the Persona protagonist, save for Persona 2's, tackling daily life and the supernatural all fall in the confines of high school life. And while of course, high schoolers don't always have it easy and are not immune to how bad the world gets, there are times when certain issues could be addressed with the complexity it truly possesses, when the audience is of a more mature mindset as well. Also, it's not always easy seeing a bunch of teenagers in disturbing situations for some. The main protagonist in Metaphor canonically starts the game at age 18, and most of the party members you meet seem to be of a more mature age as well. I can see them tackling a lot more mature issues and concepts more openly because the party is simply older. It's good to note though that this isn't really Atlas's first foray into more grown-up titles. There are games like Catherine and, like we mentioned, Persona 2 that have a predominantly adult cast and an off-age protagonist. despite not being the trailblazer for this. It seems there is something special about Metaphor that people are catching on to. And if the game is here to stay, they now have a fresh vessel to get even more creative in stretching those creative muscles and hopefully create more nuance to their stories. While I am still yet to fully sink my teeth into the meat of the main story, I can already see the potential that a lot of gamers are hyped about, especially if they finish playing the game. The well-earned hype of Metaphor doesn't seem to be going anywhere. I can't wait to imagine what the teams at Atlus can cook up next. But if I had to throw in my 2 cents right now, what I love about Metaphor ReFantazio is that by being a fantasy game, they have the avenue to bend or break conventions and create more complex and nuanced storylines that could truly make a lasting impression in video game history, perhaps already matching eye level with the franchises that came before it. Well, I guess it means I gotta keep playing. And that's all the time I have for today's Gaming Backlog. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and maybe we can start playing Metaphor ReFantazio together. What are your favorite parts of the game so far? Tell us in the comments below. If you want to hear us ramble on about video games, subscribe to our channel and click that big old bell. This has been Beena, and I'll see you next time.